Welcome. Glad to see you all today. I hope you guys have been learning, and I hope that you guys are one step closer to building your idea after today. At 10X, we focus a lot on governance, AI transformation, AI strategy, and it's a topic that small and large companies need across the whole world. And I will say that it's different for every company, and no one has it figured out yet. However, we have a really great set of panelists up here that have a lot of experience on the subject matter. So I just want to get started by each one of us, 60 seconds to introduce ourselves, where we come from, and then I'll start the questions for the day.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Isabel Amazon Brown. I'm an independent consultant. I'm based in Norwich, and I work almost exclusively in the international development and humanitarian sector. So I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle from many of you today. And my job is to either design and then build products, mostly chatbots and AI products, and also advise international NGOs, multilateral organizations, funders on when to build or not build.
Hi, my name is Wana May, and my background is mostly as an entrepreneur and in product. Since I left Meta a few years ago, I coached over 1,000 product and engineering leaders. So I've systematized how to teach the brain and how to make the decision on what's worth building based on the failure points that I've seen in my experience. And now I put this in Moatcraft, which is a startup that I'm leading with my co-founder.
Hey everyone, great to be here. So I'm Max. I run a company called 100 School, and essentially we help companies who have access to AI and convert that access into usage, but then also capability, and then some form of or level of changing how they actually work with AI rather than just using it for using it. So our flagship product is 15 Days of AI. We go in, we upskill the whole company, raise the proficiency level, and then help them kind of move forward with their AI transformation. So excited to chat more.
Awesome. So first question to start us all off, this can be answered by anybody. So before we celebrate anyone can build, what's the part of that sentence that's a little bit of a lie inside of a real company? Who wants to take it? If anyone can build, what's a kind of a lie that you might be seeing with that statement?
I think I'll have a go.
Just talk up.
Yeah. I think the problem is the word can, and I would actually replace it with the word should, which I know is kind of partly what we're talking about here. Because I think in the work that I do, there's a really interesting tension happening between very traditional sector who's very risk averse, quite understandably, because we're working with already incredibly vulnerable populations who are existing in incredibly challenging contexts. So a huge amount of risk aversion, a lack of innovation compared to the commercial sector, but also paired with a desperate desire to be more efficient, to make money stretch further, to create impact with fewer dollars. So there's a tension that's really, really kind of gripped our whole sector, and that is the kind of core question is just because it's possible and just because the carrot is being dangled in front of us, should we actually do it? And I think that is the more important question than the fact that whether you can or can't.
Anyone want to riff on it? Of course.
I want to add some data to this because I just did a talk just earlier. You can probably find it on the Create With website. But the data that I shared there is that in 2019, there was Pendo research showed that 80% of the features that got built were rarely or never used. Right now, with AI and the ability for anyone to build whatever they want, I don't even want to know what that number is. And another piece of very interesting data that I shared, which is research done by a very reputable institute of engineering research, is that AI adoption is massive in companies, and they write so much more code. But the reality is that the gains in actual bottom line are very, very little, and not because they don't build more, but just because they don't build the right things.
Thank you. Let's have a new question from Max here. So Max, if we forget about strategy for a second, what's the actual first thing that a non-technical person should try to build this week? Like a boring project, a system? Is there anything that you find that with these non-technical people that is a good thing for them to build?
Yeah, I think that going back to your first question as well, the word build is so interesting because it means a million things to a million different people. So build for us or a lot of people in this room could mean building something called vibe coding, and that's kind of very scary for a lot of people. Whereas building for maybe a more non-technical audience or people that haven't even used AI and just getting their feet wet, that's a very different definition as to what that means. But as to where you should start, where you should begin on that journey, I think it's literally about mapping out the tasks you're already going to execute on that day, and then thinking, all right, or just picking randomly the one task that you find the most annoying to do with AI, and actually, without AI, and then picking it to build with AI, and using Claude or whatever to kind of just start moving through the process of building. And it may be the smallest thing possible. It may be just copy that you get back, or it could become a system in and of itself.
Awesome. For Juana, AI can build almost anything now. So the bottleneck moves from can we to should we? How do we teach that judgment to someone who's never had to make the call? And what does getting it wrong actually look like? So, to these new builders, what does that look like?
That's a very big and complicated question, but you're lucky that I created the answer to it. and it's the talk that I mentioned that I just did earlier. So I encourage all of you to look it up on the Create With website. I think there will be a recording of it. But basically, this product sense or product judgment is something that product managers, you would hope they would have built and developed in themselves over years of experience. But now, a lot of people are trying to build. So how do they get this product sense thing or product judgment? How do they get it fast enough to actually build the right things? Because if you end up, I don't know, building another note-taking app, you're definitely not going to be an overnight success, right? So that's what I did with the talk earlier. I shared the system that I created that is a very deliberate, step-by-step system to ask yourself specific questions before you even start building, to identify whether it's the right thing to build. What I found is that most people tend to go very broad and they don't have specifics. They don't know the actual problem that they're solving. They're just thinking, okay, well, it would be nice to get something like this, but they don't really know who cares, who would pay, why. Would this even have a chance to become a business? Is it big enough? Is it important enough? Does anyone care enough about solving this to wake up in the middle of the night and give you like a lot of money or whatever you ask of them to solve this problem for them? Is it that important for anyone? Because if it isn't, it's not worth it.
Thank you. Isabel, there's a lot of people very excited to build right now. But what might you advise them of, like, when maybe they're pitching something to you and you could advise them of, like, when not to do it? Like, one of those things of just like, no, that doesn't seem like the right way, think about it again. Like, what are some of those things that you look out for?
Yeah, again, with the caveat that in the use cases I'm working in very different contexts where, like I said, the stakes are very much higher. So probably the pause button would be triggered more quickly. I think the biggest thing I would say, and this has come up at one of the great workshops earlier, is if you haven't done your research, then you shouldn't be building yet, with a caveat that I'll get to in a minute, because there's building, as you pointed out, but there's also building to prototype and test ideas, which are two very different things and shouldn't be mistaken. But yeah, do your research. And by the way, one of the other things that strikes me here today amongst all of the brilliant talks is that It's been amazing to see the enthusiasm by people who are, not traditional developers, not traditional people in the engineering world, in the VC world, in the startup world, trying new things and having the power to do that, as you pointed out yourself. But I think we also need to remind ourselves that all of the principles that we in the product space have learned the hard way over the last 20 plus years of product experience, digital design experience, all these things still hold true, and yet the stakes are now even higher. So I heard a great talk earlier that made some really important points. But really what we're talking about is the importance of creating minimum viable products, for example, starting simple, being really cautious about feature bloat. So do your research into what it means to create digital tools. There's so many assets out there already. Depending on the context that you're working with, it's also incredibly important to understand your users as best as you possibly can. And that includes the limitations for them to actually use your tool in the first place. So I think all of us take for granted here that we have, regular access to the internet, that we have regular access to electricity, that we have the digital literacy skills required to make the best use of digital tools and actually do the thing that it promises to deliver to us. Similarly, we assume that we're all operating on the same basis in terms of the level of privilege that we have, or the level of, gendered relationship with our use of technology. All of these things, even in the West, shouldn't be taken for granted. So I think really making sure that the foundations upon which you're building the assumptions that are underpinning your idea are really solid, really well researched. Whether or not the particular product that you're excited by and that that's kept you awake in the middle of the night ends up being the one you build, that foundation is the thing that will eventually lead you down a path to create something successful. But you cannot build good products without doing that research in the first place.
Thank you. Max, I'm going to pass this question to you. And it was a question that someone asked me earlier. They're like, hey, I'm a CEO of a 50-person company. We have an engineering and then we have a non-engineering team. How do I get my non-engineers to start building things? And what is the right way to start thinking about this?
Yeah, so with a lot of companies we work with, the classic thing, there's two problems. So one, they will come to us and say, all right, everyone is at very, very different levels. You've got your early adopters, you've got your people that are really terrified and anxious about using this technology, and then you've got predominantly your engineering teams that are ahead of the curve. And I guess engineering is probably one of the first use cases that was instantly applicable and useful, whereas there's probably a lot of non-engineering use cases that were more abstract in terms of using AI, so the adoption was probably slightly slower. Anyway, the question there is, well, how do you kind of get your non-technical teams building or creating or using AI? And I use the word using there because, again, not everyone necessarily should be a builder. I don't think you should necessarily arm everyone in your organization to be a builder. That is not potentially a good thing. But if you enable your broad non-technical population at least how to do the basics with AI, so data analysis, how to write, how to create slide decks, how to prototype and show their ideas, so that they can either pass those on to either the champions network in their teams or move that onto engineering. So I think the best way you can get your non-technical population to start is giving them small tasks that help them build that habit around their working day to use AI. And that's probably the first thing I do.
Awesome. Go for it.
Yeah, I just want to double down on something you just said around the importance of prototyping, because I agree with you that I don't think everyone should build. I think people should be given the digital literacy skills, the critical literacy to decide whether they can and they're a good fit. But I do think everyone should be able to build enough to prototype, because the number of times that I've sat on projects which are 6 months in, 12 months in, 18 months in, and nothing has yet been built because you're following a kind of more traditional process, and you suddenly realize that everyone around the table has a completely different concept of the thing that is being invested in. So if I could change anything in the builder space, it would be empowering enough team members across the board, not just the people whose job it is to actually design the products or, you know, measure the impact of the products, everyone, to go away for an hour and build a prototype of what they think everyone is building and use that as a launching pad to actually talk about, you know, like what we are and aren't building and why not, and creating something tangible as quickly as possible from which you can then have richer conversations. For me, like the value of universal building and building democratization kind of lies there for most teams that are of those different skill levels. So.
I want to bring something to this because you're right, prototyping is very important. And I love that you're saying prototype in order to color the conversation, the deeper conversation, because what a lot of people will understand from prototyping and testing today is let's just build whatever, put it out there and test it. And I'll give you all a challenge. You probably have that LinkedIn friend or that person that builds another web app every other week. And they come and they say, oh, look what I built. Do you want to try it? And then you try it. You try the first one. You try the second one. By the fifth or by the seventh one, you don't even try it anymore. You don't even look. You tell them, oh, it's awesome. I love it. Good luck with it. Right? So then the results that you get, if you exhaust your audience with testing, is going to be skewed.
Well said. Well said. Thinking about this for a second, for anybody, what is the most impressive thing that you've seen a non-engineer build? And it could be like a system, it could be a skill, it could be an app. Generally, like these non-builders, what are we seeing as like as a success in that way? Or
I think it's quite telling, actually, that we're all like, do you want to answer? I'm not sure. I don't have
you
any.
could also take the alternate approach and say what you saw was not a good thing that they built as well.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. So, as I said, I coached quite a lot of product leaders, and they're so excited that they can build with AI, and they started building stuff, but that stuff is not working oftentimes, and that's the thing. What you need to build right now in order to get credibility and a product that someone would pay for and that would be, I don't know, enough to justify that, tends to go beyond something that you can vibe code in an afternoon. Now, what you can do with what you can vibe code in an afternoon is validate some hypotheses. But the actual product, that's why I agree, not everyone should build, because there's a little bit more complexity of what you should actually put in a product.
Yeah, I'm really trying to put pressure on myself to not be a Debbie Downer, so I'll try and give a positive example from my own work. So I'm a designer, but I'm not a visual designer, so I don't create user interfaces. My decks are frankly horrible to look at. And it's always been a kind of Achilles tendon for me, right? Because my whole job is to synthesize ideas, carry people along on a journey, translate complex concepts into things that people can understand. If you love reading, then, my previous work you would have really enjoyed. But most people now are obviously reading way less, and everyone has different levels, etc. So from my perspective, one of the real assets that it's brought me is the ability to translate stuff that was previously incredibly complex, text-heavy, dry, with lots of different moving parts, and very quickly create very accessible, visually oriented assets that still have the kind of nuance that the work kind of deserves, but that I've knocked up in the space of a couple of hours playing around on, GPT Plus or whatever. So I think the utilities obviously are going to be unique to each different person, but I think finding the one skill for each team member where something that they are fundamentally good at, but maybe they haven't found the right medium to communicate that skill or to kind of leverage that skill to its full ability, is a really great starting point for their journey as a builder in whatever shape that might take.
One kind of thing that just came to mind as well is it's not so much a workflow that I've seen that's incredibly powerful to share today, but it is how time has been reallocated between teams based off the usage of AI. So There is a marketing team that we enabled to essentially have more control over their website, their marketing website, their landing pages, etc., that they were putting out. Now, beforehand, the bottleneck there was IT and engineering, because they had to wait before they could change anything on that page or that site, whether it was copy or the look or the feel or whatever like that, to make those changes. Whereas now they have built the capability to do that themselves, which has taken, has given back time to IT and engineering, which is great, but then it's given them the ability to increase the likelihood that their landing pages are going to convert because they can change them more frequently. And it's a marketer that is changing that copy or doing or running more A/B tests than it is kind of an engineering team holding that bottleneck.
For our C-suite in the room, how important do you think it is that the C-suite get up to speed with AI as well? As non-builders, technically, how important is it for them to also learn the latest skills of AI?
Just a quick one on that. I'd say incredibly important. I think the organizations that are most forward-thinking and probably progressive with AI and advanced are those that have had leadership model that behavior from the get-go. And they're the ones that are using AI day to day just as much as their employees are. Because if you say you're a CEO and you want to drive change through the organization, if you're not actually doing the thing that you're asking your employees, there's a big gap and chasm in that communication plan. And I mean, the biggest example of this is Shopify's CEO, who is shipping code like every day on Shopify using these kind of vibe coding tools. Now, is that something your CEO should probably be doing? No, or that's an outlier case, but it's just an example to give you a feel for kind of what I believe those organizations should be doing.
Yeah, just to double down on that, leading by example is key. Like, if you would work in a company where your CEO would not touch AI or would use AI very little, would have no idea what to do with it, would you be curious to use it? Would you be using it? Probably not. Because at the end of the day, you look at your leaders to try to model the successful behaviors and the patterns that got them there and what they do to be successful. So if that's what they teach by their example, then yeah.
Let's say we have a really eager employee where they're like, hey, Max, anyone? I've been learning Claude Code at nights and weekends. I feel really good. I want to contribute to the product, or I want to contribute to the code base. Or what is a good way that you can guide them in a safe way to start doing more with AI in your company? And I know it's different for everything, but maybe some suggestions that anyone has of like, we want to take this enthusiasm and help them, but like in a way that's safe for the company.
I actually have an example. It's a little bit pre-AI, but for example, when I was in Meta, this engineer came to me with an idea that I didn't understand at all. It was very technical for like data pipelines. What I was doing is I owned the authenticity verification platform and data infrastructure. So it's very technical. I didn't really understand what the idea was. His manager didn't even understand what the idea was or how valuable it was. But I didn't say no. I didn't say don't do it. I said, okay, well, let's figure out how this can enhance the strategic direction that we're moving into. So I think this encouragement and helping people to see the types of value and the types of metrics that they need to look at and see if they can potentially move, that will give them encouragement. So this engineer went and got the data, and it turned out that that was one of the star projects of that half, and it 10x'd our ability to improve our ML models to test and improve. So it was huge, but nobody had noticed it because they didn't position it in the right way. So I think helping people to understand the direction that we're moving into and how to align what they're thinking about and encouraging them to try things and to figure out, okay, how much value can I bring by doing this is very powerful.
As we work to finish up here, I'd love to hear from each of you, maybe a tip that you can give to our new and aspiring builders in the room of leaving this conference, what things they should be thinking about for doing more with AI, interacting more with AI at their companies, and for the leaders out there, how they can empower their employees with AI. Take whatever approach you want, just like one tip each. Max, why don't you get started?
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think if you're a CEO or kind of in the C-suite thinking about how to kind of start your AI journey as a company, I think you should think about two things. Measurement and pathways. So most companies start their AI strategy by throwing mud at the wall. There's probably a lot of unnecessary mud you do not need to throw at the wall if you know what's happening already in terms of what your usage looks like, what people are using AI for already, and what the propensity to learn and the mindset is towards AI in your organization. So start with measurement or try and understand a little bit about where your people are at so you can then create more targeted interventions. And then secondly, those interventions should be pathways. They shouldn't be one-time things. They shouldn't be hackathons that just start and then end at the end of the day and say, look, we've built an AI strategy. It shouldn't be a workshop series that kind of begins and then ends overnight. It should be structured pathways that help your people continuously upskill because this thing is always improving as well.
My advice is a bit contrarian to what I've been saying so far, but there's this advice generally that you should start your day with a win because then it'll give you more motivation for the rest of the day. So I keep saying, okay, we should build the right things. Don't test just everything because you will wear out your audience and so on. But on an individual level, go and play with AI. If you haven't done it before, go and play with it. Find time to play with it. Build the smallest things that you just fancy building for whatever reason. Just have fun with it and find your love for it and explore if you haven't done it. And then once you get to the point where, okay, I want to build a business or I want to turn it into business value, then you start thinking, okay, strategically, what should I actually build? What should I test? And how do I leverage AI? But first thing, if you haven't used AI, use it, play with it, get that little win to get you started, and find your love for it. Find how it works in your life.
Yeah, I was thinking about your speech this morning, and one of the things you kept saying again was like, if I can do it, you can do it. And this fear maybe that coding, building, product shipping, whatever, was only for like a particular brand of like super smart technical people, and that part of your journey and why it was so powerful was that you kind of disproved that, I guess, to yourself and to other people. And so I would say that's crucial. So it's kind of similar to what Iwan is saying, is it's not just about digital literacy, but it's about fostering a culture within your organization of digital confidence, particularly and especially for those people who think that, the technical side of things, the design side of things is absolutely not for them for whatever reasons. They could be personal reasons, they could be cultural reasons, they could be kind of broader structural reasons, but finding ways to kind of empower people to have that confidence, to sit down and play and to think, what role could I play in this new emerging ecosystem, and what is going to be my particular kind of interpretation or embodiment of my unique skill set in the world of AI building. And that's not just about, how do you do it? It's about building confidence and about building a culture of creativity and a willingness to kind of experiment and create within kind of safe boundaries, and seeing what emerges from that, and taking it from there.